of the Portal to Sci-Fi and Fantasy, we held events on our site on Info Island for many years. In September of 2006, I was lucky enough to be sitting with a group of people in Second Life who were interested in developing a site for folks who enjoy sci-fi and fantasy, as well as for those who are curious about it. The Portal grew from that meeting. Floria Hand, Hawk Lightcloud, Chris Brickfeld, Michael Maitland, Grizzy Griswold, Abby Zenith, and I worked on a plan for the Portal. I helped through the first year while learning how to function in a virtual world. Yes, Second Life was my first experience in any virtual world. I became the leader during the second year of the Portal. Before continuing with descriptions and visuals of our events and displays, I want to thank so many people who were absolutely crucial to running the Portal. These people helped by hosting various, yes, I can read my own writing, hosting various discussions, developing crucial displays, initiating events, creating bills and displays, and by offering spot-on advice. Pam Ribble, Lauren Tone, Bookie Blaylock, Rebecca Cavan, Zurach Flaxclaw, Librarian Greg, Ribbon Homewood, Angie Duran, Patricia Paris, Symmetry Monroe, Adrian Tigerpaw, Zobid Zuma, Lorelei Juno, David Crome, Davito Crome, Dare to Be Wise, Celine March, Shauna Montgomery, Bryce Galbraith, Phoenix Winks, and Snow Scarman. Inside the building there were many displays and collections. One featured ethnic authors. One had two PowerPoint presentations, Virtual Reality in Science and Science Fiction, and Neural Prosthetics in Science and Science Fiction. They showed a path from imaginative idea to development in real life. On our upper level, there were tables for the Hugo Awards and Nebula Awards. Each table had prim boxes, one for each decade, from the first award to the current decade. Clicking on boxes gave you one note card with all winners of the decade, plus a choice of any one of the award winners, which were listed by year. The award winner cards had title, author, and summary. We did this to help people choose a book by knowing something about it, rather than just pinning a list of titles to the wall and throwing darts at it. Also on the upper level was a table with prim boxes that provided links to sci-fi and fantasy reference sources, sci-fi and fantasy genres, and sci-fi and fantasy alternative universes. Another table had monitors with web links, sci-fi catalysts, idea generators, research sources, genre workshops. Also, a resource finder for fantasy muses. On the main floor, there was a table with two orbs and one monitor with links to sci-fi and fantasy sites in SL, like Nexus Prime and Steampunk, plus alternative universes in general. I'll talk about one of the sites in Second Life a little bit later. By the entry door was a table with freebies, such as space textures, Sound Shack Sci-Fi Sounds, a Sound Shack HAL 9000 interface prototype, and the DEL.ICIO.US link. We held 3 monthly discussions, starting with sci-fi and fantasy in print, covering novels, short story collections, magazines, anthologies, internet sites. A short time later, we introduced monthly discussions covering films, radio, and other audio forms. In 2008, we developed a series called Meet the Author, held 6 to 8 times a year. Stefania Shepard and Kath Monroe, part of the publishing group in Second Life, put us in touch with many real-life authors who participated in Second Life. Okay, examples of our Book of the Month discussions, including 2 that I'll mention now. Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Parable of the Sower, this is the book cover, is a story set in a time when civilization has disintegrated. Life is not valued. Positive behavior is only a memory. A young teen named Lauren Olama, her family, and a few others live in a walled neighborhood. They look out for each other and try to maintain a semblance of what the parent generation called the good old days. Their walled neighborhood is finally destroyed during the night by an attack from outsiders. Drug addicts, pyromaniacs, gangs. Her family is killed, along with almost all of the people living in her neighborhood enclosure. She had prompted her father and some neighbors to prepare escape bags with maps, food, clothes, guns, and cash. She and the few survivors begin walking from Southern California toward hoped-for safety, even if they must go all the way to Alaska. This is a quote from the novel. Along the way, some of her neighbors were killed. Strangers sometimes joined them. Through shared dangers and open honesty, this group becomes the backbone of what would become known as Earth Seed. Positive relationships between families and friends become the core of the story. A new member offers them a chance to establish their community on land he and his sister own in Mendocino County, where he, his sister, and her family live. Tragedy awaits their arrival, but it becomes their new home. And I'm sorry this one's sideways. I gave it to the nice people who made the PowerPoint presentation for me. That one was incorrect. Anyway, it's a wonderful quote. You'll have to turn your head to the side to read it. Always Coming Home was published by Hugo Award-winning author Le Guin in 1985. This arguably utopian novel portrays the life and culture of a group of humans called the Kesh. Set in post-Holocaust Northern California, it tells the story of a woman named Stone Telling, who was raised in a peaceful Kesh village, but decided to abandon that life and live with her father's patriarchal and military people, the Deso, or Condor people. The story is part novel, part textbook, part anthologist record. It stands on its own. Le Guin was named Grand Master by the Science Fiction Writers of America in 2003. Others of her writings include Wizard of Earthseed, 63, Left Hand of Darkness, 69, Hugo and Nebula Awards in 69, The Word for, what's clicking? Oh, The Word for World is Forest, 76 Hugo Award, The Dispossessed, got both Hugo and Nebula Awards in 74, The Matter of Segre, 94, was a Triptych Award, Forgiveness Day, 95, a Sturgeon Award, many more novels, short fictions, and poetry. We participated in the library group's Banned Books Week. This is from 2010. We discussed the sci-fi books which had been banned over time, including, take a look at the list. I know I was totally flabbergasted when some of these turned out to have been banned in the past. Examples of our Film of the Month discussions include Inception. This is the portal poster that we posted by our portal building so people would have information about the story and know when we were going to have a discussion, etc. When Inception was released in 2010, some found it confusing, while others named it one of the most innovative films they'd ever seen. It's roughly the same genre as other films which take place in virtual space, where you question what's real and what isn't. Inception takes a different tack by using people's dreams as the setting instead of a computer-generated reality. We discuss themes in the film and the problems of trying to decide what's real and what's a dream. This is still photo from the film. The story follows Dom Cobb and his crew of thieves who operate in the world of dreams, totally outside the law. They're pursued by corporate bounty hunters. Cobb follows one heist not to steal, but to implant an idea. The reward for this success will be that he's reunited with his family. Failure will result in a lifetime spent in a limbo of dreams. Begun in 1965, this project produced a film that is still controversial, as well as a book which is sometimes at odds with the film. While Kubrick worked on the movie, Clarke worked on the book, cursing Kubrick for rewriting the script. In the meantime, the Soviet Union seemed to be winning the space race. As McCarthyism and communism began to decline, 2001, the movie came out in 1968. The book was published 3 months later. This is Arthur C. Clarke. He's holding a still photo from the film. Predictably, the world was confused. Since then, decades of criticism, praise, and analysis have followed. We discussed author versus filmmaker problems and brought in historical perspectives. It was a lively discussion. In 2008, we had a Meet the Author event. We started our Meet the Author events. We invited authors to come to the portal to talk about their books and speak with the audience. How often do you get a chance to talk to a real live author? Stefania Shepard and Kath Monroe from the publishing group in Second Life put us in touch with many writers that they represented or knew about. In 2008, Eric Gordon Bainbridge spoke to us. He is a real-life writer who lives in Northern California, has a master's in broadcasting with a screenwriting concentration. He won a student screenwriting award at the Northern California Emmy Awards. Warrior Brothers was his first published novel. The National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences awarded him a Student Screenwriting Award. He is also a ghostwriter. In addition, he's a former software developer and part-time computer instructor. In the story, aspiring boxer Cody and his friend Tobin pretend to be the reincarnation of revered ancient heroes known as the Warrior Brothers. They do it as a lark. They're young men from an advanced civilization stuck in a backward society on a distant planet called Quogue. They hope that the women who shun them now will find them irresistible as the reincarnated ancient heroes. The scheme backfires when Tobin is abducted from the planet. The only way Cody sees to rescue him is to rise above his own prejudices and work with people he despises, especially Akabo, a geeky technical wizard whose unique skills are indispensable for getting them into space. At their first meeting, Cody beats him up. Getting into space is only half the battle. Once there, they have to fight foes, including interstellar mobsters and android fire-breathing dragons who are worshipped as gods. In the process, Cody, Tobin, and Akabo have to become the warriors they pretended to be. Throughout her career, Ray Laurie has written comic books, film-related articles for online publications. Her university's English department chose one of her articles as an example for article writing. For contributions to her school newspaper, she won a Success and Leadership Award, more than one. She received a BA in Media Arts and Animation. Her manuscript, Hotel Sunset, won an honorable mention in an annual Writer's Digest writing competition. Under various pen names, she's written books, novellas, short stories, running the gamut of science fiction, fantasy, Roman noir, and paranormal romance. We had several special events. One absolutely wowing one was presented by Fleet Goldenberg. He gave a wonderful talk. Excuse me, darn pollen. He gave a wonderful talk on warp engines. Unfortunately, I didn't transfer the slides I was going to use to the people who made the PowerPoint thing. So I'll simply explain. Using models, Fleet explained that warp engines, he explained what they were and how they worked. He illustrated how they developed, starting before the Star Trek series aired, and the changes that came through Star Trek, different venues, and other sci-fi things. When it was discovered later that current warp drives were breaking down the fabric of space, that's when a limit of warp 5 was imposed, unless it was an emergency. Now this, Salazar Jack is one of the people who has created, or had created, a section of Second Life that showed the history of his people. Unfortunately, most of that build is gone. We met Salazar Jack in Second Life and discovered he is a descendant of the ancient people who lived in an area of the metaverse, which was then called Utahara. That was before Linden Lab arrived in their area. A catastrophe called the Great Erase had befallen the Utaharans approximately 35 years before Linden Lab arrived. He and his family escaped to Earth with a few others. They lived on Earth for a while, then were able to return using Second Life's interdimensional transportation technology. There was a wonderful lighthouse. The whole area was beautifully developed. There was the lighthouse and the village. A lighthouse guides sailors and citizens safely home through the worst weather. In the office of the old lighthouse was a mechanical solar system, many other tools used in seafaring. From the top of the lighthouse, you had a view of the village, the sea, the forest, and Phineas Jack's lookout, which is still there. The forest of Karuval, you can still walk through it. This was part of the ancient lands where the Utaharan people lived. The Phineas Jack's outlook is the second picture left side, second picture right side. This is the portal. Please notice in the lower right-hand corner, building with a black top and a transparent surround side. This was the Sky Stories build that we made a little bit later. You touched a teleport thingy when you were on the ground and then came up to the entry of the portal. Here we are reviewing the entire Star Trek series on TV and in films. This is inside the portal, showing our 2 levels and different exhibits around it. We spent the whole month on War of the Worlds in all of its incarnations, 2 discussions of the novel, 1 discussion of different film versions, 2 discussions of the infamous Orson Welles radio broadcast, which panicked the listening public. We always gave people ways to find information on any topic, book, or film we discussed. For instance, War of the World was printed 24 times from the 1800s to the decade when we had our discussion. And here's 12 of the issues. Notice that many of them were printed in different languages. And here's 12 more. That was a fascinating month. The last I'll mention is an exhibit we made at ground level, which I referred to. Our Sky Stories build was kind of like a cave with cushions where people sat to hear stories about star patterns. The star pattern appeared on a screen on the back wall. The story was read aloud while people studied the star map. For 2 to 3 months at a time, we featured one star pattern, like the Big Dipper, with an accompanying story about it from somewhere in the world. The first was Hans Duncan the Wagoner, a story from Germany, in which case somebody he gives a lift to turns out to be a star visitor. The one other one about the Big Dipper was a legend from the Shohomas tribe up in Puget Sound. Thank you for listening to the history of the portal to Sci-Fi and Fantasy. It was a fascinating experience to be involved in our variety of events, to meet so many talented and interesting people, and let our imaginations carry us to the stars.